Hey guys, today's story is about a DM that tries to TPK. Okay, so I just got into D&D last year. I joined in the middle of a campaign that was being held over Discord and Roll20, and was using 5e with some homebrew rules. The group I joined was fun, and we all had a blast, and we even ended the first campaign, and after a few months of one-shots, the DM started a second campaign taking place in the same world as the first one, just 15 years later. The party consisted of 5 people: a changeling sorcerer, who was me, a half-elf bard, a dwarf fighter, a hobgoblin cleric/wizard, and a human bard/sorcerer. The story of this campaign was great, though, as you can see, most of the party makeup was squishy spellcasters. The only frontline fighters being the dwarf and hobgoblin, so they would always take up the front as the rest of us supported them from the back. We were on our way out of the Underdark when all this happened. As we were heading towards the surface, we came across a giant spider's web. So, after some time, and I can't really remember this part of the campaign too well, sadly, we had to fight some giant spiders. It wasn't really a tough task, until my sorcerer threw a fireball in the web, burning it and revealing that all the giant spiders we were fighting were actually the babies of a spider that took up 6x6 squares. So yes, for anyone that doesn't know the size system, this meant that the spider was around the same size as an ancient dragon, but through a lot of lucky dice rolls, we were actually able to kill all the spiders, even though the player that controls the dwarf couldn't make it. But that wasn't the moment that the DM tried to pull a TPK. That came later, after we made it to the city that the dwarf in our group came from. We found out that the last time the dwarf was there, they got into trouble. So for us to be allowed to pass through the city with no problems, our group agreed to take care of a problem that the city has had in the mines. We thought that we would get a long rest before they would try to make us do this job, but anytime we would try to ask our guide where a tavern was, he would brush us off, even after one of us, albeit I don't remember who, got a high roll to find out, to which the guide seemed to wander off, and the DM told us that because we don't want to follow him, he was just going to leave us. And at this point, I was still new to D&D, but even then, this still kind of set off a red flag in my head. Now, the reason why we wanted to take a long rest was because we didn't get one after fighting all the spiders, and most of our spell slots were used, and we had lost some HP. I should also tell you that at this point, we were level 9, and the DM liked using the monument system to keep us all at the exact same level, and to keep people from just killing NPCs for no reason other than to get experience. So, we all caught up with the guide, and he led us to the mine. After going down in there, we started to follow the caves. But as soon as we got there, the DM had us all roll initiative, and needless to say, we were all stunned as we didn't understand as why they had us do this, as we couldn't see any enemies. And as we kept going deeper into the mines, the dwarf kept charging forward as his character wanted to die a glorious death in battle. As the dwarf kept pushing forward, they came across a room that had broken boxes filled with smashed potion bottles, and a goddamn Neolithid in the room. To which some of you may think, oh, a Neolithid for a level 9 party with 5 party members? Well, that shouldn't be too bad. And normally, it wouldn't be. But a few of us were wounded, and lacking spell slots, as we weren't allowed a long rest before doing this job, and the DM never told us why we couldn't. Also, I should bring up that this DM did like to tweak the states for enemies, to make sure that no one would cheat by looking in the book, and to make fights a little bit harder. And as for this fight, because of all the potions that the Neolithid was in, it got more than 1 turn per round. And when I say that it got more than 1 turn, it got 4 turns per round. So the fight started, with the dwarf being the first to find the Neolithid, and the Neolithid got to move first, to which it swallowed the dwarf. So he was inside it for the whole fight, as he kept failing to get out. So for the whole fight, our only main frontline fighter was the hobgoblin, who only had 1 level in cleric and 8 in wizard. Things were looking like all of us were going to die at this point. And it got worse as the Neolithid used a spell, and the DM rolled to see if it would use the spell, and on who. So the spell got used on the Hobgoblin, and the spell was Feeble Mind. And for those of you who don't know, if the targeted creature fails the saving throw, its int and charisma both get brought down to 1. So the Hobgoblin rolled to see if it would pass the save, and got a 3. And this is where things got really bad, because now our wizard couldn't use any of the spells that they knew. So, at this point, we all believed that we were going to die, and I could kind of swear that the DM sounded happy with everything, even though the DM and Hobgoblin were actually a couple in real life. But the player of the human in the group realized that they actually had a 4th level spell slot, and used it to cast Polymorph on the now very dumb Hobgoblin, and used it to turn them into a T-Rex. The reason why the DM allowed this was because in our first session in this campaign, we all started at level 6 or 7, and we fought an undead T-Rex. So the DM couldn't say that we never saw one before, as we kind of did. So, my changeling and the human hid as the T-Rex ripped apart and ate the Neolithid, with a half-elf helping a little bit on the side. In the end, our group had managed to kill the worm, and the dwarf popped out from its neck, upset that he didn't die in the fight. And as my character looked in the room where the Neolithid was, he saw a giant purple thing pulsing on the other side of the room, and with my character not wanting to take any chances, he used his last, highest level spell slot to throw a fireball at it, making sure to burn that thing and making sure that nothing else would come out of it. That session ended with us heading back to the city, knowing we would need to find someone to fix the Hobgoblin. But the whole time after we won that fight, the DM just sounded defeated, almost like we did something to upset them. The next week, the guy playing the Hobgoblin in the campaign ran a goblin one-shot as most of the players couldn't make it. And it was at the end of that one-shot that the DM said that they were going to end the campaign, as they were getting bored of D&D 5e and didn't want the story to suffer. Looking back, it just felt like they were trying to push a TPK on us to try and end the story so that they didn't have to tell us that. As, when they told us, they made it sound like they were only taking a break from DMing, but 2 or 3 months later, they closed the Discord server. As I had known the DM for some time by then, I got the feeling that they didn't want to hurt anyone else's feelings by saying that they didn't want to DM anymore. But it would have been better that they were forward with it instead of doing what they did. Well guys, burnout is a thing that can happen to both players and DMs, and if you are either and you're starting to get burnt out, let your party know. Don't do something that could ruin someone else's or everyone else's fun, and if you're a DM, then you could try to talk to your party and take a couple of months of a break to see if you can get the desire to do it again. Or maybe one of your players would want to be a DM themselves. I've heard quite a few stories before where a player will take over as DM, at least for a time, and some groups have benefited greatly from this, while others not. But to summarize, talk to your party. Communication is key. But in any case guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have a story that you'd like me to narrate, let me know. And as always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.